Hi, everyone. Dr. Adriana Popescu here today on Tuesday, September 10th, 2019. This is World Suicide Prevention Day, and I thought that I would go on live to talk with you all a little bit about my experience on this topic. It's not the easiest topic for people to talk about. Most people don't want to go there. Most people don't want to know about it. And yet I think at some point in time, most of us have had an experience of either feeling suicidal or knowing somebody who has, or perhaps even knowing someone who has committed suicide. I'm going to talk a lot more about all of that as well. For those of you who don't know, I am a licensed psychologist. I'm an addiction and trauma specialist within that, and I'm an energy psychologist. I am also an empowerment coach. And so, I'll talk more about my experiences, both as a professional and as a person, because these issues have certainly affected me, as they have, I'm sure, many of you. Hi, guys. I see Dawn and Heather are joining. I'm just going to kind of ramble here in the beginning and as people come on board. But I would love to know, as part of this Facebook Live, I would love to hear from you guys as well about what your questions are, what your experiences have been. And the way to do that in this format is to write in the chat box or in the comment box. So you should be able to see there, just like you would comment on a post in Facebook, you can also comment, and I should be able to see, yes, I see when you guys click like, the little hearts go by. That's really fun. But if you have questions or comments, you can definitely put them in the comment box there, and I will definitely address those. So again, for those of you just joining, I'm Adriana Popescu. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. I've been in this field for going on 25 years now, I think, almost 30 years, actually. I had my first experiences in college. I knew I wanted to do this work from very early on. I was somebody who grew up with a fair amount of trauma in my own background. And I had had experiences very early in life, like my parents going through a very messy, kind of violent separation and divorce process. And then my father died when I was 15. And I just remember thinking as a kid, like, no one was ever there for me to talk to about all that. And I really struggled with that, that no one was really, I felt very isolated and alone, which I think is what happens for a lot of people when it comes to feeling suicidal. And I actually did have my moments when I was a teenager where I seriously, considered jumping off the balcony of my apartment in New York, where I had moved with my mom after my parents got divorced, because I just couldn't see myself ever being happy. And really what was going on with that, and I'll say more about this later, what was really going on with that was like me being aware of other people's sadness and depression. But I did have those suicidal thoughts myself at that age. And then when my father died, I really felt alone, because nobody my age had had anything really happen like that before. Nobody had had a parent die at that point. Some people had started having their parents get divorced, but I realized that as these things started happening for my friends, I was by myself, like giving advice or supporting them or being at least willing to talk about what they were going through, which I didn't have. And so I realized, wow, like I could actually do this. My father was a doctor, so I was already looking at the healing professions as a career. I wanted to be a doctor like him. But then, by the time I was 16, I realized, actually, I would like to help people with their pain, with their suffering, with their problems. And so why don't I become a psychologist? So I was one of the people who's very fortunate to know at an early age that this is what I wanted to do. So I pursued that in college. I actually was pre-med at first, and then I got into realizing that psychiatrists, unfortunately, these days don't actually do a lot of therapy anymore. They mostly write prescriptions. And so I switched that to clinical psychology, eventually, started getting internships and working in the field. Some of my earliest experiences actually were working in locked psychiatric units. And that's where you were dealing with a lot of people who were suicidal because they had made a suicide attempt or they were threatening to make a suicide attempt. And so they would get locked up, sometimes voluntarily, sometimes against their will. So I worked in New York Hospital, Cornell Medical Center for a whole summer on a lockdown psych unit. I also worked with teenagers in a lockdown psych unit later in my career after I got licensed as a psychologist. And I've been in private practice for about 10 years now. I've also worked with my addiction specialty, I've worked in different drug and alcohol rehab centers. What we see a lot in those places is people with some pretty severe depression, definitely people with suicidality, people who have made suicide attempts, people who had a lot of trauma, and all of that. So that's a little bit more about me and my background. My personal background also, kind of how I got into alternative treatments for mental health as well as physical health, is because I had a struggle myself with my own health, where I had developed, unbeknownst to me at the time, I had developed Lyme disease with chronic fatigue syndrome and a host of other symptoms that actually created a profound depression for me as well. I would call it, this was the time when I had a dark night of the soul. And so in my search for healing myself, I came across alternative therapies like chiropractic, acupuncture, and eventually energy psychology, things like EFT, tapping, NET, B-set free fast, all these different tools that I use in my practice, which you can find out more about on my website, adrianapopescu.org. And because I give a lot of resources, including some of these modalities. And it was in the working through my own personal stuff, the traumas that I had, the stuff I had taken on from others, it was through that I learned about these tools and was using them to clear the energies that were creating my depression, my illness. And when I finally found the tools of access about 9 years ago, that was really the final piece of the puzzle where I was able to let go of the things that were causing me to be so sick and to create this condition in my body that would have killed me had I let it keep going and not gotten the tools. So I want to share a little bit about all of that as well. So I think I'll go ahead and move into what I want to say about suicide. Okay, so what is suicide? I mean, it is a choice that people have. It's a choice to end your life, to free your spirit, your soul, if you will, from your body. It is my awareness. I am somebody who's had enough experiences and awarenesses to get the sense that when we die, it isn't that we just go in the ground and that's it. I know really at this point beyond the shadow of a doubt, and I think I've always known, that our soul goes on even when we don't have a body. And I've also developed this capacity that I have for communicating with and perceiving spirits over time with the tools of access. And so when my dad died many years ago, you know, I could feel his presence around me. And I actually, back in those days, it was through the Ouija board that I actually was able to communicate with him and talk with him. So when it comes to suicide and the experiences that I've had, I am aware that suicide is a choice that people have. But the problem with someone when they're so depressed and hopeless and they get to the point where they're really seriously considering killing themselves, ending their life, they're usually functioning from a no choice universe at that point. In Access Consciousness, this modality that I practice quite a bit of, we talk about how there are really 4 elements to creation, and that's question, choice, possibility, and contribution. And I want to talk about those in the context of suicidality. When you're in a suicidal space, you're really not asking questions anymore. You're not really, in fact, if anything, your ask to the universe is really asking for more pain and suffering because that's all you see. Like we talk about how your point of view creates your reality. And when you're in a suicidal frame of mind, all you're seeing is more pain, more suffering, and you're not seeing a way out. right? So the question is not consciously happening, and the subconscious choice, the subconscious ask you're putting out there to the universe is, my life is pain and suffering. There's no way out. I'll never be happy. I'll never get through this. And so the ask and you shall receive concept is really true. It works. But if that's your ask, if that is your either conscious or subconscious ask, the universe is going to keep bringing you people, places, things, situations to bring more pain and suffering, because that's the point of view that you're having, right? So there is no question of what else is possible at that point. There is no question of how could I get out of this? How could I be happier? The person who is suicidal has come to a fixed conclusion that this is how my life is going to be. I'm never going to change. And the only way out is this, right? So, so that really feels like no choice, or that the only choice is, to end your life. So question choice. With that, there is no other possibility and for something different. And then in terms of contribution, at that point, you're not really willing to receive any contribution from the world. When people are so depressed, it's kind of like a black hole. Those of you who have been depressed know this, right? It's like the energy, it's very dark, it's very black. You just feel like you're sucked into this hole and there's no way out. So at that point, you're not really receiving any positive energies, the energy of joy, happiness. You don't even have access to that stuff when you're that depressed, right? So one of the things that I look at, when I'm working with someone who's having these suicidal thoughts is the question, what else is possible here? What else is possible that you haven't yet considered, right? What other choices might be available here? And then the question that we use so often in Access, that is one of the primary tools to create change, is who does this belong to? So what if the thoughts that someone who's suicidal is having, all of those negative thoughts I was telling you about, what if those thoughts actually aren't even coming from you? What if you are so empathic, so highly sensitive, that you are picking up on the thoughts and feelings of others around you, if not just the people in your immediate world, but literally like hundreds, if not thousands of people all around you? This is what I find is true for a lot of the clients that I work with. They're picking up on those thoughts and feelings of people for miles and miles, thousands of miles around. And if you look around, how many people in this world are happy right now? Not a whole lot. So who does this belong to when it comes to suicidal thoughts? And even urges and the feelings, the hopelessness, the sadness, the profound despair, or even the numbing that happens, is that stuff even yours? What I realized when I was feeling suicidal around the age of 12 or 13 and having those thoughts myself is I now realize in retrospect, that wasn't ever my stuff. I wasn't the one who was depressed and suicidal. That was my dad. My dad was not a happy person. I mean, you look at photographs of him, there's not one photograph of him smiling ever. There's only photographs of him with this sort of sad look on his face and a cigarette in his hand. And that's the energy that he functioned from. He was angry. He was a rageaholic. For him, his sadness, he had lost his mom at a young age, whatever his reasons for depression were, it came out in the form of anger. And so what I realize now looking back is that that suicidality, that not wanting to be here, was never mine. That was his stuff. And you know what? So if I was about 12 or 13 when that happened, within 2 to 3 years after that, my father actually died. That's when he had created a cancer in his body, created lung cancer, and he passed away very quickly. From like 6 months from when he got diagnosed, he passed. And I get it in retrospect, like he was done. He didn't want to be here anymore. So sometimes when we create an illness or we create with addiction, a lot of the clients I work with, especially the ones using like heavy drugs and alcohol, the ones who are using, for instance, IV drugs, every time they shoot up, they know on some level, this might be the dose that kills them. And so it's a form of passive suicidality. So suicidality doesn't always come in the form, right, of I'm going to I'm going to hang myself, I'm going to shoot myself, like something very intentional like that. It can also come in this more passive, even less conscious kind of way, where we're creating a condition in our bodies that could kill us. And that was the case for me with the Lyme disease. And in retrospect, how the story all fits together is I myself, the being who's talking to you right now, the spirit, the soul that I am now, actually came into this body later than the body was actually born. I came in at the age of 2. And what I now know about all that was that I came in to try to help my dad who was suffering, and to help the original inhabitant of this body, who by the age of 2 had absorbed so much of dad's depression that you look at photographs and she's never smiling either in the photographs. She is a miserable and unhappy person. And so what ended up happening with this whole Lyme disease is that my original inhabitant had created that condition as a way to kill the body so she could get out. And what I discovered when I finally found the tools of access consciousness and talked to the entities in particular, that's a subspecialty within access that's really about working with people to teach them how to deal with their awarenesses and capacities around the spirit world. Once I started practicing those tools and realizing that this being that was trapped inside my body in here with me didn't want to be here and wanted out, and once I was able to use the tools to let her go, suddenly my life turned around dramatically. Suddenly I got a lot happier. Suddenly the Lyme disease and all the health problems, I had gotten significantly better at that point, but then all the symptoms went away. And I've been happier, and my life has been more fulfilled and satisfying and abundant than I ever actually even imagined possible. And I know I'm just getting started, and how much more is available to me still as I keep using these tools for myself, right? So everything I'm talking to you about is coming from personal experience, both me, Adriana, as an individual, as well as Dr. Adriana, the psychologist. So then I have these experiences myself, and then I start working with clients who also seem to have similar things going on, seem to have an illness. People come to me with cancer or other kind of chronic illnesses, and oftentimes there can be this similar thing going on where, one, they are either taking on the pain and suffering of others, unbeknownst to them, or two, they may also have some sort of spirits attached or in their bodies that don't want to be here. Or a variation on that can be, you've got entities or demons, which is a type of entities, that are telling you to do things. So like in Western psychiatry, we would call that command hallucinations, right? They call them auditory hallucinations, when you hear voices in your head telling you to do something. And many people who we call psychotic, and you can have depression with psychosis. That is a diagnosis we have in the mental health world. When you have that, not only are you super depressed, which is a mood disorder, but on top of it, you're hearing voices that are telling you you should go kill yourself. And isn't it interesting that that's usually how people hear it? You should go kill yourself. Now, do you talk to yourself in the second person using you? Or do you talk to yourself as I should go kill myself, I'm so unhappy? That's more you, but if you're hearing it as you, that might be the indication that someone else is talking to you, because spirits will talk to you. And in my experience in the last few years, more and more of what I have thought in the past was psychosis, which, Western medicine wants to tell us is a brain chemistry imbalance. I'm realizing that may not actually be the case. There may be a brain chemical imbalance as part of it, but what might really be going on is that people are super psychic, super aware, and they are hearing other beings, or they're hearing the thoughts in someone else's head. I got a lady downstairs in my building who has some sort of eating disorder. She looks anorexic to me. And I can perceive late at night, I can perceive myself wanting to snack on things after I've just eaten a full dinner. I'm not hungry, and yet I have this compulsive urge to want to eat snack foods. I know that that's not mine. I got the awareness a long time ago that that's her stuff. She's the one who's been starving herself all day, and now she wants to, I don't know if she purges, I don't know what she does, but I got aware of her cravings to want to binge. And so we're picking up on the thoughts, the feelings, the urges of people all around us, And we may also be hearing people specifically, entities talking to us as well. And so this whole idea of who does it belong to is such a powerful tool to help people get more clarity around the thoughts that they're having, the feelings they're having, and what if those feelings aren't actually yours? What if it's the guy next door who's depressed? What if it's my father, actually, even though he died when I was 15, his spirit was hanging around years and years and years after that. And I always felt this like sadness that I could never seem to shake. And I was still aware of his sad. And here's the thing about dying that I want to say to people. Sometimes people, when they get suicidal, they think that's going to be my ticket out. That's going to end my pain and suffering. And I don't know now that that's really true. I have had the experience with some clients who have committed suicide. I have perceived them. They have come back to me once they have died, and they have had a sense of relief. They have finally had a sense of peace, like, okay, I am not suffering anymore. I'm not in a body. I'm not dealing with the same things I was dealing with when I was alive. Some people have had that, it's true. But also other people take their pain and suffering with them when they die. I've had many, many spirits come to me that I know, that I don't know, including my own father, that were still holding on to their sadness, still holding on to their trauma, their pain, their suffering, and then they go and take it with them into another lifetime or whatever it is. And so many of these spirits that are still earthbound are struggling. And what they'll do is they'll be attracted to energetically people that match that vibration. And so they might get attached to someone who's suicidal or hover around them. And they might put ideas in their head like, yeah, you should just kill yourself. I've had clients come in and say, I heard this voice in my head saying I should jump off the bridge, or I should, go to the Golden Gate Bridge and jump off of it, or whatever it is. So the thing is to recognize, where's that voice coming from? What if that's not mine? So who does this belong to? And then what you do with it, if you realize that this isn't mine, or even if you're not clear if this is mine or not, you take that energy of the thought, the feeling, whatever, the urge, and you send it back and you see what happens. Usually it goes away. Usually when I recognize that those crazy thoughts I'm having aren't mine and I send them back, okay, I can be in my own universe. And sometimes I literally have to pull myself out of someone else's universe, especially the people I'm close to, right? Because the people we're close to, we care about. And a lot of us think that, I care so much about this person, I just want them to be happy. And in doing that, we might be going, unconsciously, we might be going into their world and taking on their pain and suffering as an attempt to heal them. I know that this was what I was doing my whole life with my parents, was I was trying to take away their pain and suffering. I wanted them to be happy. I wanted them to be the parents I knew they could be. So yeah, I would take on their pain and suffering, which, didn't make them any happier and only gave me a pileup of emotional stuff that at the time I didn't know how to cope with, and eventually got locked in my body and caused me to get so sick, right? So the other piece of this with who does it belong to is, are you a healer? And have you not acknowledged that? Dr. Dane here, who's the co-creator of Access Consciousness, actually talked about that as well this morning. He did a Facebook Live for World Suicide Day and talked about how sometimes when we are highly sensitive and when we're healers, we are taking on the pain and suffering of others, which might include their suicidal thoughts and feelings, particularly those people that we care about. And we might misidentify that it's our feelings of wanting to die or our feelings of hopelessness, when in fact it's those of the person that we love. But listen, you guys, if you have those healing capacities, first off, you need to acknowledge them. And then you need to ask yourself, is me trying to take away their pain and suffering really working? Or is there a different way I can support them? Like, what if I could just be there for them? The people often wonder, as the friend or loved one of someone who's feeling suicidal, who's feeling hopeless, you sometimes yourself can feel like, oh my God, what do I do? Like, I don't know how to help this person. Well, what if you could get into allowance of their choice, right? Because there is an element of choice even in the suffering. And I know that that's hard to accept. That was hard for me to accept. Gary Douglas, the founder of Access, one time facilitated me on this in an advanced pragmatic psychology class. I just couldn't understand why anyone would choose to suffer. To me, from my psychological training, it was, well, the only reason they're suffering now is because something bad happened in the past. They had a trauma. They went through awful stuff. They were abused, and that's why they're feeling the way that they are. But you know what? Over time, I've come to realize that that may not entirely be the case. There are people who are choosing their suffering. I do see this every day with clients of mine and clients at the rehab. They know, like, in this day and age, when there is so much support out there available, when you have, therapy that's available, even free. I mean, there's crisis hotlines. There's the suicide hotline. There is, help available to you. There's low cost to no cost therapy. There's so much out there for people. And there's all these tools, even within Access Consciousness. Like, yeah, you could pay a lot of money to go have a session with a practitioner, take one of the classes, but also how much free stuff is there out there on YouTube, on Facebook, on all the social media platforms, just with the tools of access. And so in this day and age, when people have so many tools available that we all know work so well, and yet they choose not to avail themselves of them, they choose to continue to drink, to use, to stay depressed, to not get help, to not see a doctor, to not take medications that might help them. Because I'm not actually someone that's against medications. I think that they can be very effective, especially when someone is profoundly depressed and has that, we call it that anhedonia, which is like you can't even, it's like a lethargic, you can't even get up and get out of bed. Like, psych meds can be very helpful for some people to pull them out of that, but it's also not necessarily the magic fix. It's not the only thing. You still have to look at what are the thoughts that someone's having, or whose thoughts are they buying? What's continuing to create this depressed feeling, and a lot of times it's things like shame. It's the feeling that I'm not enough. It's these core false beliefs we carry around. I'm not enough. I'm not worthy. I don't deserve to be happy. I'll never be happy. You still have to work with that, regardless of where those thoughts are coming from. And I'm going to bet that in the majority of the cases, they're not coming even from that person. That person picked them up from someone else, bought them as theirs, and then solidified them as real and true. And so they're functioning from those points of view as if they're their own. Like, I was functioning from a point of view that I'll never be happy. That was my dad's point of view. I didn't realize it at the time. But now we have all these tools that can help people become more aware and can help people challenge those thoughts. We've got cognitive behavioral therapy. I mean, we have a host of traditional psychology methods that can work. And on top of it, we've got these incredible energy psychology tools. We have things like tapping and working with the energy imbalances in the body that contribute to, or that are related to, feeling depressed. We can give someone acupuncture, and that can change where they're feeling stuck and blocked energetically. There's a myriad of both traditional and alternative therapies, and the tools that I really enjoy using are those energy psychology ones, in addition to traditional talk therapy stuff, like cognitive behavioral therapy, which I use a lot. But using the access tools, who does it belong to? Looking at the entity component, are you perceiving spirits talking to you? Do you have other beings in your body with you? Do you have demons talking to you? Guess what? We have clearings for these things. It's very easy to clear entities, to clear demons, and if you have these gifts and capacities, which is what they are, if you have these gifts and capacities to perceive these things, to perceive the thoughts and feelings of others with and without bodies, to heal other people, those are incredible gifts. And you can use them, learn how to use them to work for you rather than against you. And that's what I did. And that's why I can sit here today and tell you without a shadow of a doubt that if you do want to change this, or someone who is suicidal and wants to change it, you absolutely can. But most people don't realize that there's another choice. And we're back to that. When you're suicidal and you're so depressed, you're in a no-choice universe. So the key thing for those people to ask would be, what else is possible here? What else is possible that I haven't even considered, right? And then maybe, talking to somebody about it, getting some help, getting someone to show you a different possibility. Because I know when you're in it, it's really hard to see. Like I said, you don't even have access to your joy. You don't have access to happiness. But sometimes someone else who does can show you, can be that space. The space I am with clients, I'm that space of allowance. I'm not judging them. I'm not making them wrong for feeling suicidal. I'm not, oh my God, let me put you in the psych hospital immediately. Yes, that may have to happen because I'm obligated to do that as a licensed mental health professional. I may have to put someone in the psych hospital for their own safety, but I don't respond with this, oh my God, kind of like reaction. I'm not in judgment. I'm in space, just being space with them. Like, okay, so you're feeling that way. Let's talk about that. So many people are afraid to even talk about that. And that's part of the isolation. We know that one of the main causes that people become suicidal is because they feel isolated. They feel cut off. They're no longer connected to other people. They're not connected to themselves. They're not connected to the earth. They're not connected to their bodies. They're numb. They're not connected to the universe, God, the divine higher power, whatever you want to call it. They're really disconnected. So anything that helps them, any which way in which you can help them feel more connected, like, hey, I'm here for you. I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to make you wrong. I'm here for you. What can I do? What contribution can I be? Okay. That's what you can do for the person who's feeling suicidal. What else? There's also really interesting, in the realm lately, a lot that's been showing up for me, which is really kind of fascinating, is the therapeutic uses of psychotropic agents. Like there's a whole movement right now and a ton of research that's happening that's looking at things like ketamine, MDMA, psilocybin, which is mushrooms, ayahuasca, all these different like psychedelic assisted therapies that actually are showing some pretty profound results for people who have what we call treatment-resistant depression and PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, severe depression, anxiety. It's really kind of fascinating what's happening, and I know it's quite controversial, especially in the recovery field, but I just recently spoke with a psychiatrist who's doing ketamine-assisted therapy here in California in the Bay Area at her clinic, and is having these amazing results and I don't know if I can explain it, but it's doing something profound. Either people are having like a big awareness or an aha, and there seems to be a biochemical component to where it's shifting the way the neurotransmitters are functioning in someone's body and their brain. And it can often pull people out of depression. I mean, this is why they were doing shock therapies. They still do electroconvulsive therapies with really severe depression cases, and sometimes people who are suicidal, they will still in some facilities give them ECT, but so you've got still a lot of tools that can work, but these psychedelic assisted treatments are kind of interesting. So I just put that out there. I'm not advocating them. I'm not for or against them. I find it interesting, and I myself am learning more about them just to give people another resource. You've got traditional medications, you've got these sort of alternative psychedelic medications, and then you've got all these other tools, all these other ways to work with energy, all these other ways to work with thoughts and feelings. There is a plethora of tools available for people to change anything, including suicidality. So I think those are the major points I wanted to hit on. I want to invite you guys to type in any questions or comments you might have. Is there anything else you want me to address in this conversation? How is this landing for you? What are you guys getting in response to what I'm saying? And you guys can just type those in the comment box. Any thoughts? Has this been helpful? Has this brought up anything for you? What experiences have you guys had with people who might be suicidal, or your own experiences, or whatever it may be? What else is possible here? What else could we be talking about? And if you missed, I see those of you that are just joining. Hi, guys. I've just been talking for the last 34 minutes or so. about this whole topic. You'll be able, once I end the live, you'll be able to watch the recording of it. It'll be still living on the Facebook page. But right now I'm just kind of opening it up for questions and answers, comments, feedback. Was this helpful? Did you guys get anything out of this conversation? Feel free to type in the comment box, and hopefully I think I'm seeing them. Oh, bars. Yes, thank you, Ruth, right there. I meant to talk about bars as well. Yes. So in Access Consciousness, we have verbal facilitation tools, of some of which I've shared with you. And we also have hands-on energy work. And the first energy work we usually address in Access is the bars. And the bars are these 32 points on the head that when you lightly touch them, releases the electromagnetic charge that gets created by thoughts, feelings, emotions, judgments, whatever it may be. And so what happens is, and I think the greatest story of this is actually Dr. Dane's story. He talked about it earlier today on his Facebook Live, which I would also highly recommend you guys check out over on his Facebook page, Dr. Dane here. And he had this experience where he himself was extremely depressed and suicidal. He got his bars run, and he had this like profound like opening. Basically, he remembered a time when he had had a spiritual awakening when he was a teenager, where he had felt joy and oneness and connected to everything. And he eventually lost that and cut off from that. But in his bar session, he actually had remembered that, and he started giggling and laughing like a child, and never felt suicidal ever again. And here he is 19 years later. His life is so profoundly different. And he's really an inspiration with what he has gone through and how the tools have helped him. So I highly recommend that. But yeah, when we're running bars on people, when we're doing this process, which takes an hour, it could be an hour and a half, it really does change the way people feel. We've done some research now. We're just getting more research underway where people have been hooked up to EEGs, to look at brain waves. We can see changes in the brain waves. We see more coherence between left and right sides of the brain. We see the brain waves slow down to theta, which is the more relaxed meditation space. It's also where people are going in hypnosis. In that space, it's much easier to release thoughts, feelings, traumas. Bars can be really helpful, especially when you run it with another energy process that you learn in class called trifold sequencing systems. When you run bars with that, it can really help release the trauma energies that are locked in people's bodies. We're actually using bars up. I use it in my private practice, and we've brought bars up to the rehab center where I work. And it's really helping the clients so much, particularly when they're going through detox, when they're first getting off drugs. And because so many of these ladies have had like horrific traumas, the bars is really helping them like release some of that trauma along with the other work. So it's really a gift that we are able to offer bars to clients. And one of the campaigns this month, with this month being World Suicide Prevention Month, and today is the actual day, but this month, one of the things that Access facilitators around the world are offering is free Access bars sessions for people who are feeling hopeless, who might be feeling suicidal, who are extremely depressed. And so there is, I will type it in the comments bar after, or if someone else can do it right now, that would be great. There is, I believe it's accessconsciousness.com suicide awareness. I think there's a whole page on the Access website devoted to it. And from there, you can find practitioners who are doing like a whole day-long clinic, or there's a lot of resources out there. Dane has some stuff posted for it as well. So we'll get you guys that, that page, that resource. So bars is really amazing. I myself get my bars run at least once or more a week. It's just part of my self-care at this point. It really helps me when I'm feeling like agitated or when I get down, because I still have days when I'm feeling down. It's still not usually mine, but oftentimes I still allow myself to be at the effect of other people's stuff. So bars is super helpful. There's other hands-on energy processes that can help as well. So definitely, if you're someone who's struggling with this stuff or know someone who is, please do pass that information along to them. I'll also put in the comments box, there's the National Suicide Hotline. That's free of charge to anybody in the United States who might be feeling suicidal. And I know they have them in other countries as well. So any other final thoughts, questions, comments you guys might have? If not, it's really been a pleasure. Oh, here, now I'm getting them. Okay, cool. I'm seeing more of your comments. Bars clinics all around the world. Yes. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Heather in there put in the comments on Dane's website, drdanehere.com. We have never give up. For some reason, they weren't scrolling through. So I'm just now seeing your comments. Sorry, guys. Thank you, Richard, for the feedback. Yes. Oh, and Antonietta, you're doing in Bolivia and Santa Cruz. There's going to be some bars, free bar sessions with people. And also, you guys feel free to reach out to me. I'm offering that as well in my private practice. If you're here locally in the Bay Area, you're welcome to contact me at my website, and I will type that one in as well, adrianapopescu.org. Also, I have upcoming classes, events. If you're curious to find out more about me and what I'm up to, you can find that on my website. I've got a Zoom class happening tomorrow on money and shame, a foundation class here in San Francisco this weekend, some talk to the entities classes actually in Romanian for my Romanian friends. I will be facilitating in my parents' native language. So I'm excited and kind of nervous about that. But anyways, all those latest and greatest you can find across my social media, my Facebook, Instagram. I'm on YouTube, SoundCloud, you know, I'm all over the place. So if you want to contact me, you have many ways to do that. I thank you all so much for being here today and supporting this conversation. And what else is possible for changing depression, suicidality, for people to know that there is a different possibility available and that they have a different choice. Thank you so much. Bye, guys.